Welcome to Spy Satellites, a podcast about Dune Imperium and the people who play it. I'm your host CJ, and this is Rotation 13, where we're discussing the newest expansion to Dune Imperium Uprising called Bloodlines. So join us, why don't you, for a round-table discussion focusing on cards, combos, atomics, and everything spice. If you like what we do, please give us a like and subscribe, and if you'd like to support us, you can do so on Patreon at patreon.com/hiddenassets. Supporting us helps us continue to produce quality content and gives you some access to some pretty awesome perks, including voting for the upcoming podcast topic. So tell your friends and let us know how we're doing. We're always trying to improve the quality of our content, and we can't do it without you, the listener. So today with me is our one and only Black Shadow. How are you doing, Black Shadow?
Yeah, good morning, everyone, or whatever time of day it is. Feels like morning to me. It is about 4:30. I've been up for maybe an hour. My life as I haven't talked about it. A lot has happened since the last time we sat down for one of these podcasts. Not that it's been that long ago. Just a lot has happened. I'm now a competitive e-gaming referee.
Woohoo!
CJ's been on his jaunts across Europe and all sorts going on. It has been very eventful here. I do hope everyone has been enjoying their summers. Obviously, we have been kind of a little bit, foot off the pedal in return to content because we knew a lot of stuff was going to be going on. And we obviously mentioned about that. Not much longer left of that, truth be told. Next competition for the channel isn't a million miles away. We'll give more details of that as and when we have those. My new life as an e-gaming referee has been interesting. It's not been too bad, actually. I won't go into too much detail here. I will say is I've had someone say, "Oh, you basically get paid to watch Twitch streams for a living," and that's not entirely untrue. It's. I will say that the stuff I've done, like obviously with having my own YouTube and Twitch channel, which you can find at twitch.tv/blackshadow993. Cheap plug there. And as well as obviously the stuff doing the tournament organization, obviously with the comps here and like doing rules and stuff like that, and my quality control work has all kind of played in to the role I'm doing now. I've taken to it super well. It's going all pretty nicely so far. Just stuck on the night shifts a little bit at the moment. So I would like to give at least some days a spin. But the people are pretty good. The job's not particularly difficult. It's just about like having that being worked flexibly with the other stuff that I'm doing, which is going to be interesting in a few weeks, is what I would say.
So can people find you doing some of your actual work on Twitch, or like the new job, or is it just like offline stuff that you're commentating by watching stuff? How does that work exactly?
Well,
or are you not allowed to say? I don't know. I'm not sure.
I am under NDI or NDA for a little bit of it, admittedly, because the TLDR is I'm basically an integrity referee for one-on-one online gaming for esports, specifically FIFA and NBA. And then those, we do it all in studio. We've got a load of studios, and then those broadcasts are then sent off to several eBay and websites and such, obviously. So integrity is obviously a huge, big part of that. But if you happen to stumble upon the right place at the right time, you can indeed find me refereeing these games. Although I don't know how physically visible they are. I've never actually asked, should be told. I'll have to go ahead and do that. I'm in this evening, so I'll chat about that. But no, it's not been too bad. It's been fun. Fortunately, I already know how to use a stream deck, kind of. With all the streaming I do and all the stuff that I do broadcasting wise. So that's why I put my name forward for the role, and here we are.
Nice. Well, we're not here to just talk about that. I think it's awesome, though.
Damn.
Really, really sweet.
I can talk about
chat about that more.
I think we could do an addendum.
Yeah. We're here to talk about Bloodlines, which was announced not too long ago, August 4th, about a month ago. And there's been a little bit of chatter online about it, but then, we're all kind of like, I think everyone's just kind of waiting because, you never know how this is going to change the game, and we didn't really know how Ix was going to change base game when we got it, and then it completely like revolutionized Dune Imperium. So I'm pretty excited, and I'm liking what we see so far. So let's talk about that, shall we?
Yeah. First of all, I will say that I am slightly disappointed I wasn't at Gen Con. There was part of me that was actually tempted to swing on over to Gen Con this year, but I'd already funded 2 trips to the States, and you know, the bank balance was hurting a little bit. Is all I'm going to say about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was first announced over at Gen Con. We did have a couple of folks around the Discord server who were at Gen Con for the North American Championships. One of which I believe made the final, or maybe two. I can't quite recall. I think it was who was it that made the
Yeah.
final? It was
DS made the finals.
it was the
Yeah.
Yes, was it? I couldn't quite,
Yeah.
can't recall the name off the top of my head. They I know
AKA
they didn't.
Sunny D.
Which is pretty cool. And yeah, they did announce Bloodlines a little bit out of the blue. Although we had literally talked about a few days prior. I was it actually the previous Spy Satellites? I think it was.
I think it
Might-
was.
I think it
Yeah.
was, and then we
Let's
talked
see.
about it briefly. I was like, well, we might be hearing about this at some point pretty soon. And then lo and behold, like 24 hours later, there I
Yeah.
am racing out of bed to do a video.
Yeah, because we were
But
talking about things. We were talking about the spy metagame. We were talking about like the
yes,
things
yes,
we'd
yes,
like
yes,
to see
yes.
happen to spies, and that was like some speculation. So,
Yeah,
still the you know,
yeah.
we don't really know what's going to happen with regards to spies, but there are some speculations about some icons, some new
Mm,
icons. So we'll talk about those
definitely.
in a minute.
One thing I do want to make a quick mention of, you bring up Rise of X, which is actually quite relevant, and not just because we're still waiting for a ranked and car mode to appear on Dune Digital. Just saying,
Yep.
Scott. Um, so when Rise of X came out, it did completely like change up how Dune Imperium worked, and for the better. It was a really, really good expansion, and even like when it came out for digital, I've been telling people you should probably get this. It's well worth the $10 or whatever it is, and it is. Like Dune Imperium when it first came out was not a bad game by any stretch of the imagination. It was still really solid,
It was great.
but there was definitely a few things that could have been done with a bit of tweaking and a little bit of kind of modifying. And I think Rise Fix did a really good job of kind of filling the holes. I've said my piece about the fact tier 2 shipping is a little bit too much at times, but outside of that, like there's nothing to compare about Rise of X. Every space feels pretty solid. Obviously, you've got the text, which we'll talk about a little bit in a moment. Obviously, that's seeing revision in Bloodlines, which does surprise me. Obviously, new text. I mean, you could say, yeah, when we're power in the shadow is probably a bit overtuned, but I mean, look, kids, it's not Guild Spy.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
and is it possible? Another segue to a segue here. We will go back to topic here. Is Guild Spy possibly more believed to be overtuned than Galactic Master was?
I think the problem with it is that okay, and we can have an entirely different podcast about like the cards we think that are most busted and stuff like that, but which we should do.
Yes.
But the for me, it's the one card that warps the game in a way that sort of becomes a little bit unfun after a while. And I get tired of playing the Guild Spy Deny game. You know what I mean? And it's
Mm.
just like, okay, so it's a little bit of a disappointing card because of it sounds like it'd be fun to do that, but it's a lot of free stuff. But ultimately, it just forces people to behave in a kind of non-intuitive way just to deny you from running away with the game, essentially.
Mm.
Because it has the potential to help you win round 5, which we've seen happen before, and it was unusual. I think Jimmy did it at one of the invitational events, and he said that was kind of crazy.
He talked
Or
about he had done it in I think one of the sessions with his
one of the
own plot or
sessions,
something
yeah,
like that. I believe so. He had a round 5 with that, and it's
yeah,
like that probably shouldn't be happening.
yeah.
Anyways,
But
going
anyway, back
back
to
to the original point that I was making with Rise of X. So yeah, Rise of X I think did a really really good job of filling the little holes that Dune Imperium didn't quite fulfill. And did a fantastic job, which made Immortality's job a lot harder later on because it couldn't really improve the experience as such. It could just kind of add more things onto it. And I
right,
think that's what we might kind of see in a way with Bloodlines. Like, I think Uprising, like, objectively speaking, is a very well produced game. Obviously, we did our
yeah.
lengthy discussion and our lengthy review on pretty much everything you could imagine for Uprising. We went well into the weeds on it. And, like, It's a little weird in a way because I do think it's incredibly well made, very nicely balanced. I think some people can give or take worms a little bit, and the fact that they sometimes can get really swinging really out of control. But that's just a bit of the nature of Uprising. But it's a little tricky for me though. Obviously, when I saw this expansion get announced, I was like, oh, that's really good because I'm kind of in the spot where let me choose the words wisely here. I wouldn't say that I'm like kind of a lapsed fan of Uprising. I think that's unfair, but it's kind of difficult for me to sit down for a game of Uprising and kind of just play it casually because the
Yeah.
game is pretty cutthroat and at times it is really brutal. Where you
Yeah,
can
I agree.
make like either a mistake or a misjudgment, or even just get unlucky sometimes early, and it can be so difficult to recover. Uprising is really a game of just making as few mistakes as possible, whereas a game like Dune Imperium, even with Rise of X, is more about kind of like seizing the opportunities that come towards you. They might seem like two sides of the same coin, you might be right, but in any event, that's kind of how I view it, and I have been enjoying playing, especially with Dune Digital, Dune Imperium with Rise of X, a lot more as of late. So I think Bloodlines, it's easy to compare it to something like Rise of X, but I do think it's going to serve a very different kind of purpose. I don't think it's trying to feel the same kind of things that weren't in the original game that Dune Imperium had. So I think it's going to be a bit more immortality-ish, and the fact it just adds in some general game mechanics, but I think it's going to be interesting and good. We'll talk about those obviously. And I do think it will be a welcome addition on the whole, but I also think it is not going to be particularly simple. Uprising in itself is not the simplest game going, and Bloodlines is only going to add to that complexity.
Yeah, I agree with you on pretty much everything you said, and I played a couple of games of Uprising this summer, but not as many as I might have if it was like XMO. The weird thing about this is I kind of agree with you, and then this is the side track here of CJ starts to go crazy talking about Uprising. The main thing for me is that it feels like you can blunder in Uprising, whereas you
Oh
couldn't
yeah.
do that in X. And you know what I mean, like in chess terms, right? You can
Mm.
make a move that is so devastatingly disastrous to your play that you lose.
Yep.
There's just not much you can do about it, and that is hard in a Euro game for me because I'm used to, all right, you can make a bad move, but you'll still progress your game. Whereas I think that in this game, because of the way that water is gate kept by the three water deep desert and other things are gate kept
Combat
by other
rewards.
sorts of things, it feels like you have to have those setups. Otherwise, you just are totally screwed or totally locked out of certain things. And while I think that's a feature of the game, I think that makes the game more rewarding and more enjoyable at a really super high level. I don't I have no illusions of playing this game at a super high level. I play it for fun. I enjoy it. We make some strategy guides here, of course, and things like that. But like, I am not the best player of Uprising. I'm much more competent at Nix and MMO than I was at this, and so I feel like I haven't been playing it as much as I wished I could, and I hope, as you were saying, that Bloodlines broadens Dune Uprising for me. Because so one of the things I like talk about when I'm talking to my friends about design, game design, is like there's depth of design and there's breadth of design, right? And for me, I think that Uprising is a game that has a lot of depth. Like there's a lot of nuance to what you're doing, and there are many different deep choices, just like in chess, right? You have like all these really deep choices that affect the game on a nuanced level, and so understanding that depth can bring you to a better, more competent level. But it's really hard to see sometimes, right? Especially if you don't play it like on the daily or whatever.
Mm.
But what Ix did for base game is it gave it a lot of breadth. It gave it a lot more options. It allowed you to more competently, I think, win through like spice must flows and tech tiles and other things like that. And they gave you more options of how to counter attack different strategies, right? And so like combat was really good. Everyone wanted to like dump in on round 7 and try to win round 7 with like highliner and so on. That was a very common strategy, right? And then you'd hit highliner and then you'd hit what do you call it, research station and draw cards and try to get the combat and buy a Spice Must Flow. That is like the best thing you could do in base game. But Ix gave you a lot more options, right? With the tactiles kind of putting different spins on the mechanisms and giving you other ways to score points and stuff like that.
Mm,
That's my sidetrack.
yeah.
So, but I hope Bloodlines does that too. I hope it broadens the scope of what you can do and other possible powerful ways to win the game.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if it's going to. I really hope it does, because that's what I feel like it's lacking right now. It's very deep, but it's very narrow in scope. You don't have a lot of options. You have to combat. Like,
Yeah, and
you,
this is true. It is really hard to win a game of Uprising without winning like a round 7 or round 8 fight. It's really hard unless you have like some specifics, unless you've got like you know uh, what's Corinth and
yeah, one
maybe
of those
like
point generator
you've got
cards.
point generator cards or Guild Spy.
Yeah, yeah,
Outside of that, it is really hard to just muster enough physical points. Because influence is difficult to find. Spice flows are not the easiest thing to get together unless you get kind of some of these really big sets of bits and pieces. It's tough. It is really tough to, without some battle points. So there's always a tendency to have to go down combat, and if you're going down combat, you then get pushed towards worms to double the combat rewards, and so hopefully, Bloodlines will expand out a little bit and not feel quite as violent as like feel like you've got to win round
yeah.
7 or round 8 fights,
And I
realistically.
think this might be just like an us problem. We've been playing a lot of Dune, and so like I have some friends in my real life meetup where they are just totally obsessed with Dune Uprising. And I think that it's really attracting a lot of new players to the game because of how different it feels and how powerful you feel with worms and all that stuff. But they don't have, a lot of those players are new to the game itself and to Dune Imperium, and so they don't really have the kind of like, I've been playing Dune for a long time. Then I played Ix. Then I played Uprising, or Immortality, and now I'm playing Uprising. They don't have that kind of experience of the progression of those games, and so I guess that it's good, right? It's good enough. It's a very good game, but when you kind of like look at it and all of that, there's some like things that I wished it did that are, this again is probably a me problem, but
No, no,
um,
no, no. I actually agree. There's two things I want to quickly bring up here. First of all, I think I do acknowledge every time and again that something we have to bear in mind, especially around this channel and around obviously we do a lot of competitions, is that sometimes we're not. I try to be more conscious of the wider sphere of board gaming in that, when we're talking about like, competitions or really high level play, like that can get very bubbly and it's
yeah,
very easy to kind of think in that sort of way overall when a lot of people aren't thinking like that. Obviously we went really in depth in our review, for example, which not really anyone else is going to do because we've got that level of experience. But that's good. It gives you kind of insights that other people wouldn't have. But the bad side is obviously that, you can get trained into a way of thinking that other people just simply don't see, or quite frankly, don't care about.
right,
And that's totally fine. The other thing that we do have to bear in mind is now it is kind of getting a little complicated in the fact that we've now got, what is it? So it's what? Dune, Imperium, slash Uprising, semicolon
colon.
Bloodlines. Where are we now? Like it's getting kind of messy on the titles, isn't it? A little
We're
bit.
running out of punctuation, I think.
I mean, we got exclamation marks, maybe a hashtag in there somewhere. Hashtag Paul Denon. I think we could maybe slip that in there somewhere or another. But
Hashtag.
yeah, that is the only thing. Is now it was kind of a bit. You remember obviously some of the response when Uprising came out, and its comparison to the base game, and some people were saying, "Oh, isn't this going to completely invalidate what I'm already bought?" sort of thing. And there was the whole other thing that blew up as totally unnecessary. But now you've got like an expansion to a game that's a revision of the original. Is
Right.
that where we're at now?
I Yes, I think so.
Maybe?
I mean, maybe. I mean,
Question mark.
it's like I've said this before, long time ago in many podcasts. Like, this is what Direwolf does, and they've done it for all of their popular games. It's just like they start with a really solid core concept, and then they'll add expansions, and they'll iterate, and they'll add expansions, and they'll iterate. That's what they do. I mean, that's their MO, and I think that that's a very successful business model because it keeps people buying more stuff. One of the infuriating things about that is you'd get like promos at cons or other random events, and then they wouldn't be available.
Or
And I have
competitions in North
competitions in
Carolina.
North Carolina. Like I have a friend who collected, yeah, I had a friend who collected like all of the stuff for Clank, right?
Hmm.
And he was just trying to collect all the cards for Clank because he was a perfectionist or collector in that sense, and he had like it was missing two or three, one or two things or whatever, and he couldn't get them because they were only given out at one specific spot and they were being sold online for a ridiculous amount of money for
Yeah.
one card or something, and I'm like, I hope that doesn't happen. I know that was happening a little bit with Beast Spoils,
Yeah.
but this is what happens, and I think that it's just that's business. That's the board gaming industry. It is an industry about making money, obviously making games that are fun and people enjoy, but it is all about making money for companies. So we have to bear that in mind. So I think in general, I am less pessimistic about these expansions because I think that a great deal of care has been taken when designing them. Um, there's been rumors that some of the community has been involved with feedback on this specific expansion. So I can't say about that, but I've heard rumors about that. And so, yeah, I mean, I have a lot of positive thoughts about this expansion and the things that they've added. So I mean, yeah, let's get to it. Honestly,
Yeah.
we'll
Yeah.
see what the general populace will think about this expansion and how it fits into the overall work that is Dune Imperium and its iterations. But that's not for now.
Hmm.
All right, let's start with the things we know about this game. So let's start with some tech. So tech tiles. Tech tiles were added in Ix, and now we have tech tiles again added to Uprising, and we only have a couple of examples. I think maybe three or maybe four.
Yeah, there is a general promotional image that you can find. A lot of information, basically all of our information, pretty much coming from Direwolf's Bloodlines post on their website from August 4th, which will hopefully have a link of that in the description
There will
below,
be a
maybe.
link in the video description, and I will
Um,
see if I can do it in the audio only yes
yeah.
podcast.
And if you're really lucky on the video version, you might even see an image of what it is we're looking at here. The only
Yes.
promotional information that we've got here of some tech bits and pieces. I will say, text was the one thing I did not expect to see in this. I feel like I've been fairly prescient on predicting what quite a few of these expansions are going to look like. I did not expect to see tech tiles make a return for Bloodlines, but I gotta be honest, it actually feels quite welcome. All
Yeah.
things being honest, I think what works for it is that rather than in Rise of Ix, where the assembly hall is changed to be where you pick up your techs and dreadnoughts, admittedly, instead of having dedicated spaces, it's now just a separate thing entirely. And basically, if you just go to any Landrad Council space, you can go and buy a tech, which I actually think is quite an interesting spin on it, and
Yeah.
it's probably a better way to do it, I might argue as well, truth be told. If you have a High Council seat, you can also get techs for a spice less, which is, not too bad. It kind of encourages people going for the early High Council, which you've seen a little bit of an uprising, but maybe there's more reason to do that. But I will say, yeah, just having it any Landrad Council space to get a tech is both A, I think a clean way of doing it, and B, you're probably at the start more likely to forget that that's how you get the text in the first place. You give the player to the next turn, the next player their turn, and you're like, oh wait, I was meant to get a tech, wasn't I? That's why I went there. At least with Assembly Hall, like you know why you went there, rather than
Right.
like to go into Imperial Privilege. Or like Swordmaster and dealing with that, and like, oh yeah, I was gonna get that server receivers card as well. Mind if I do that? So I think to begin with, you're gonna see a lot of people like very quickly say, oh, I was gonna do that as well. So your margin is going to vary. But I do think, yeah, I was surprised to see it come back, but I actually think this is actually a pretty good idea. It
Okay.
also, sorry, one I was going to say, because it also does integrate itself kind of nicely with Rise of X specifically.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. So this board just lets you get any tech when you go to a green space. I think that's great. The Landsrad spaces, I think they've been improved a lot, and I think that's one of my. I mean, I think that the board in general in Uprising is really clever, well designed, and I think that adding an incentive to go to green early is pretty strong. What we don't have from the base from Ix are those tech negotiators, which I loved. I thought the tech negotiators were awesome. I'm going to miss them in this because you can't just like bank spice in that way anymore.
Mm.
Or a technic, it's not really spice, but it effectively is cutting down on
Yeah.
the cost of a tech tile. So there's a couple things I'm thinking about this, and it's interesting because the ones we have, servo receivers, forbidden weapons, and rapid drop ships, we'll go through those in a second, but those ones are pretty low cost. And so I wonder how low cost all of these are going to be, because getting spice for a tactile, it can be more challenging in Uprising. There's a lot of things to spend your spice on. There's the shipping space. There's Sardaukar. There's obviously Highliner. There's even espionage will chip away at your spice. And so I wonder like how they're going to balance that. Like if there's any way to get more spice um, or whether they're just lower cost in general. And I wonder if that would impact the incorporating tactiles from the Ix expansion. Like if you were to, and we've been told that this is all compatible together. You can mix and match however you want to make your own, Frankenstein's monster of a game, right? We already could do
Isn't
that,
that the
but
truth?
right. But so I wonder how that might affect adding those tactiles in if they are on the whole lower costed, because these seem pretty dang good, honestly, for the low cost.
Yeah, it's. I believe there has been some people giving it a little bit of a spin, kind of like trying to play around with that. It's one of those situations where obviously the old content was not designed with the new content in mind, although the new content is got to at least kind of have the old content kind of on the periphery at the very least when you're trying to put this together. There's been a bit of talk, for example, like bringing, as a example, with the rank stuff, like bringing like Lady Jessica, not Mother Mahayim. I'm getting it correct today. See, I'm on the ball. But getting Jessica over to like base Dune Imperium, for example, for the XMO rank stuff, and like how would that kind of incorporation work, sort of thing. But yeah, no, I think in theory having say some of the Rise of X techs in Uprising, some of them seem pretty wild. If you like Shuttle Fleet, for example, that seems pretty darn good. Memo Quarters is just always going to be solid out that. Mimic Film, can you imagine like a Gurney Hallett having like Mimic Film and just like having basically flat two persuasion on
Wow.
virtually every
Yeah.
round he wants?
That'd be awesome.
And challenging for combat, and with high counter that'd be 4 persuasion. That seems utterly bonkers.
Yeah. Might
Um,
might be. It might be too much. You never know.
yeah, I imagine that this Uprising expansion is going to have enough text where I don't think you're going to really need to throw in the Rise of X stuff. And obviously, it can't be reliant on having the Rise of X text to be added to the Uprising expansion,
Of
Bloodlines,
course not.
so that it feels it out. You can't do that. It's got to be self-sufficient. I
Right. So
also
you can't
suspect.
use the one that gives you extra troops for shipping, for instance, which doesn't work.
Yeah, yeah. Obviously, some physically won't be able to do anything. This is a good point. Invasion ships, though, by the way, all that look feels nasty in
Yeah.
Uprising. But the one thing I will say though, as well, is I think a lot of the techs you're going to see in this are going to be very kind of mid to late game focused, which is a bit kind of how techs are, anyways. Obviously, you're not going to get them immediately. But I think, again, because of the way that spice works and the fact that you don't tend to get a lot of spice early in the game, usually, unless like a few specific combats come out or like you get worms early and you get beaten into second place on like the. What's the one that gives like free spice in the troop? Which one is that?
I don't remember the name.
Yeah, I've slept since I last played Uprising.
Yeah.
And then you'd end up with like 6 ways. Like, oh, I've got a ton of spice now. What do I do with it? Well, there you go. The X text might be a solution for that. But I think that we're going to see is a lot of these are going to be favored. Like people are going to get them kind of like round 4 onwards, sort of thing.
Yeah. I
And you'll
agree.
see that happen a lot more later. Also, like people need reasons to go to the council as well. And High Council is expensive. Swordmaster, you ain't getting that straight away. And obviously, Imperial Privilege physically isn't available at the start of the game. So, very limited space there. So I think that's a direction you'll see. But I think the sector we've seen is pretty good so far. Server receivers, giving your signet ring faction access, pretty baller.
Yeah.
No doubt about that. Anything that gives you more faction access is pretty good. Rapid drop ships for spice for the couple of troops and being able to just turn anything into a combat space feels pretty nasty on gather support, won't lie. Feels like a very nasty way to get some troops in when someone's not paying attention. And the only one we know about is forbidden weapons, which is a really strange tech.
Yeah, I don't know about this one. This one kind of like scares me. It's two to blow up the wall and get a troop,
Mm.
and then on your reveal turn you can get three swords and go down a faction space, or lose all your spice and trash this tile.
Mm.
So I'm like, I get it, it's forbidden, but like, wow, it's that's a huge commitment, man. I mean, how does that even work? I mean,
I
I don't
mean,
know.
unless you've got a way of like fairly consistently getting troops in, and you simply don't care about faction persuasion for reasons. I mean, like spy
Yeah,
satellites doesn't exist in this, kids. You know, remember that.
as far as
Twin
I know.
weapons and spy satellites probably would be busted. But yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a strange one, and it also is now adding even more ways to blow the wall, as if there isn't enough of those anyways. So maybe we'll see if there's anything on the other side of that sort of thing. I don't think we will see anything that like rebuilds the wall or anything like that. Or
No, no, you can't rebuild rock. I mean, that doesn't make sense. It's a geological structure. It's like not actually something you can rebuild. It doesn't make sense. You wouldn't be
yeah,
able to do that.
and something like would say that would like get rid of all worms for one round of combat also seems pretty wild because if someone went in really heavy at like deep desert to get in their worms, and you're just like, you can get rid of those now. They don't get the spice for that. That's pretty
Yeah,
bad.
yeah,
So, we'll see how that plays out. Yeah, forbidden weapons are very situational and really dangerous. Like three swords is nothing to sneeze at all. But losing those faction bumps seems like kind of wild. I don't know how often. I mean, like you've got to have some serious justification for using that.
yeah. Maybe there will be a payoff for like going down on a track. That'd be kind of cool. It's like if there was a card that said if you went down on a track this round, do something. Like that'd be kind of cool. Then you can combo it, but we'll see. We don't have that much information yet about the
No,
cards, so
no. But yeah, overall, it's nice to see them back. I
yeah.
like it more than I originally thought. Curious to see what more of these look like.
Yep, very excited about the tech tiles. I think that's like number one for me is bring back some awesome new options. But we have lots of other things to talk about.
Hmm.
So how about the new boards? So supposedly there's the new X board we talked about, where you will put all the tech tiles. But there's also supposedly a small little, I don't know, what do you call it, a new space that we know about, I believe, and I think it's kind of spoiled with one of the leaders. It's like 2x, not, is it 2x Siege? I think 2x
Oh
Siege becomes
yes,
a
as
space
one said,
now.
yes, yes, indeed.
But we don't
Yeah.
know what that does, right? I don't think we have any spoiler about what that thing does, do we?
Not too much. It was one of the leader cards was shown at Gen Con. Specifically the ring saying that you get to place a bonus spice on 2x Siege, which assumably is his own I
Mm-hmm.
assume it is a place that everyone can visit because his passive ability talks about like 2x each and that you get rewards whether you send an agent or if an opponent sends an
Right.
agent there. So it is available to everyone. I think the fact that you got someone that brings like their own space is I think pretty nice. It's something we've never
Yeah.
seen in Dune Imperium. But like when I think other games have done stuff like that, like Twilight Imperium, for example, I think generally it's been pretty well received. They just kind of add a little bit of extra dynamism to the game. How exactly it's going to work, I simply am speculating. Is it going to kind of work like a second Hager Basin, maybe? Is it still going to have like a water requirement? I mean, I feel like it's still going to have some kind of cost or price to get there, I would guess. But is it going
Yeah,
to
I
be
have
a
no idea.
city space instead? Because obviously you got Siege Tabber, and then 2x Siege. I mean, truth be told, we don't know. It could be like a city that can generate some bonus spice with 2x ring, and it kind of looks as like a hybrid space between the two. That is not
That'd be
impossible.
cool. Oh, that'd be really
Um,
cool. Yeah, I hadn't thought
I
about that.
that is my best guess. Is it acts like a city space, but it can generate spice as well, and it acts as a hybrid. That would be my best guess, and I think that'd be the most interesting way to do it that I can think
Yeah.
of.
Let's move to Asmar Tuek then, starting with our leaders, since we were talking about his siege. So the new leader's got a 1 pip complexity leader, and he has a ability says whenever you send an agent to Tuxeach, gain a Solari, excuse me, and
Mhm.
whenever an opponent sends an agent there, take an intrigue card.
Yeah,
Just get an intrigue card.
that's pretty big.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Like, wow. I mean, you there has to be a really good reason to go to Tuxeach. So it's got to be decent, I think. Like if you're trying to incentivize people going there that are not you. And the other thing is that there's some crazy stuff that can happen forcing your opponent to take an intrigue card. Like if somebody goes there out of turn, like if say you're fourth position or something like that, someone goes to and you've got 3, let's say, intrigues in your hand as Martuic. Someone could go to the siege, then someone can go and steal an intrigue from you. Like you can
Yeah.
force them to lose an intrigue that way. That's kind of crazy. I don't think it's optional to draw an intrigue card, right? I
No,
think that's a
no,
mandatory thing. So
no,
yeah,
yeah.
that's there's some shenanigans and a little bit of table talk that I love about this card. Like you can actually engineer some situations that could take Tuick down in the case that they're starting to run away with it or something like that. But I mean, if you have a bunch of intrigue cards, what are the chances of you losing the one you want are not super high unless you're me, or there's all sorts of things that could go wrong, but or go right.
Just a little additive there. I know the
Yeah.
feeling. I know the feeling.
And his ring ability is called Smuggle Spice. You place 1 bonus spice on Tuick's Siege. So it sounds like it might be a desert space, but you never know.
Yeah.
Or take 1 bonus spice from a maker board space. So you kind of like poach spice from the maker spaces, which I love that. That is so cool. Like that changes the whole dynamic of the timing of when like the Haga Basin has 3 spice on it and 4 spice on it. Like that is so cool, dude. I love it. I think that is. It might be one of my favorite ring abilities, just like how it changes up the way that the board seeds. So very
It,
excited
it
about that one.
gives less value as well to people that are just trying to sit on deep desert and go water heavy and sit on that. I have a feeling taking the bonus spice will be used significantly more than putting the bonus spice on the siege. I think the only time you'd ever do that as Tuek is when you're physically going there when you visit it. Although I suppose technically speaking, wouldn't you have to claim the spice and then, if there's any, and then the ring puts it on afterwards? Isn't that how the
No.
is that not how the sequencing goes?
I don't think so because you do the board spaces and the ring spaces or the agent effects in any order you want. I don't think taking the spice
Oh, it's because I'm thinking of like
is
Worm Generation or Gather Support, where you have to decide in your price before you do effects. That's probably what I'm getting a little.
that's part of the price. Yeah, it's part of the price.
Yeah.
So I think it'll be interesting. Plus, there's going to be some interesting round 1, round 2 lines with Esmar.
Mm.
Like if you get the ring round 1, are you going to put a bonus spice on Tuxeach to hope to get somebody to go there, or are you or like that, or are you going to, if you get it round 2, like then taking that extra maker board space spice is going to be interesting, and it kind of forces people to go there earlier. And then the order that you're in turn is going to affect whether he is effective at doing that or not. If he's like second position and there's he can basically go to Imperial Basin with his ring, take a spice from Haga Basin, so he just turns it into a 2 spice space. It's kind of awesome. Like there's some cool stuff there that is going to make Esmar, I think, a very strong leader. So I'm really stoked for him. I think he's going to be great.
Anything that like kind of changes up a bit of like how the beginning of the game goes can't be a bad thing. Rise of
Agreed.
X, that's possibly one of the drawbacks on Rise of X, especially at a higher level, for example, is that like your opening round, like the first 3 moves you see almost every game is full space and smuggling in some order, and the third person probably goes still suits, and then from then on you work it out. So
Yeah.
anything that changes up that can't be a bad thing.
Also cool, you can turn Haga Basin into a 4 spice turn if you're second, right? Because if you ring on round 2, go to Haga Basin, take a spice from Deep Desert, right?
Yes.
I mean, you can make it into a 4 spice action for 1 water, and then suddenly you've got 4 spice to spend on awesome techs that we're talking about. So
Or,
I mean,
or even
I see
early highliners, stuff like that, because it's
early
only
hunter.
5 cost. If you got a spice from the combat, like, and it's something you want to go after, for example, you can threaten that at people, and that's pretty scary.
Yeah, I think he has some of the best upside of the leaders I've seen. I mean, all the leaders, I think we've seen them all, maybe, but or maybe not two, but they are so dynamic. So Esmar is one of my favorites. I think I'll have one more that I really am going to gush over in a minute, but yeah, I love this. I love the way that he is subtle, but has a lot of play to him. So that's going to be fun. I'm
Mm.
looking forward to Esmar Tuick. All right, who's next? Should we do Chani? You want to do
Yeah,
Chani?
yeah. Whatever order you desire.
Oh, wow. Thank you. No, yeah. So Chani is a 2-pip leader, and she has a tactician ability which says, whenever you retreat or lose any number of troops from the conflict, advance your tactics token that many spaces, earning rewards as you reach them, and then reset the token after reaching the end of the track. So she has this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 space track that essentially you're going to have a token on, and it either starts way at the back in a 6-player game or 2 in at a 1 to 4-player game. And at the third space in a 1 to 4-player game, you get spice, and then all the way at the end, you get water. So you're basically getting spice and water as you lose and retreat troops, which seems kind of good. I mean, she's just going to be
Mm.
generating bonus resources
Yeah.
for things you normally do, which is cool.
Mm. Yeah,
Um,
I mean, it's all based on her ring, though. I think it's 11 spaces and 9 if you're playing 1 to
One,
4
two,
player, I think.
was it?
Fine. Maths is difficult.
Oh
So
yeah, okay.
yeah, I'll quickly go into Charney. I mean, it's Amber 2.0, isn't it? Really,
I think
that's
so. I
that's
think
kind of what
we're
Charney is.
retconning Amber out of the space. She doesn't really exist in Dune anyway, so it's totally fine.
Yeah, it's well, obviously we've talked a lot about Amber and the fact that she's kind of struggling at a more higher sort of play level anyways, and I've already talked as well and said, like, I think I've seen people like suggest with Amber saying, well, what do you if you change this, or what if you give her 2 Solari or one? I'm like, I think at this point you're both just kind of redesigning her entirely, and to be honest, this is probably kind of what I would do. I think this, like, in an alternate universe where Charney or where Amber Matuli got redesigned, I think this would be probably not a bad way of looking at it. It's weird though for Charney in that, yeah, she goes up the spot for any time that she loses troops, but also when she retreats troops. And retreating
Yeah,
troops is very hard to do. Obviously, her ring allows her to do it, retreat any number of troops, which is kind of cooked, really.
that's good. Yeah,
And that's going to be really messy. Or if you got 2 persuasion with the Fremen, which is something you want to do anyways, you can just spend a water for 2 cards, which is pretty strong. That's
hmm
pretty damn good, especially given the fact that you're going to be generating some water on the side, hopefully by losing troops. I mean, Charney's encouraged us to basically just be a complete bloodthirst in the field, but obviously he's reliant on troop generation. So that you're going to see like a lot of potential highliners from Charney, obviously to get maximum troops in, gather support, research station, all those things that generate more troops are going to be inevitably better for her because she gets some kind of recompense from them. And again, if she's able to, like, if she's ever in a spot where she can start kind of like outweighting people, and like find some imperial privilege play, something like that, and then kind of like mess with her ring a little bit, like that could be really dodgy to play with as well. So let's
yeah,
just see how she plays out. I do think she's gonna be a bit awkward though, I think at times to get a ton of use out of her. And also kind of like the nuance of trying to work out as and when to make these kind of retreats, I think is going to be tricky. I do think like the second half of a ring is a far better part than being able to retreat troops because you're not normally going to be retreating troops in this game. It's kind of
yeah,
not common that you need to. And the only way for trying to get a ton of out of that would be to, put in way too much and then kind of retreat some of those. But it's kind of hard to do that in this game. So, especially against the likes of like Gurney Halleck, Fade Ralph with his sword generation, stuff like that. Obviously, Muad'Dib is a really nasty counter to Charney because how do you know how much to retreat when he's just pulling intrigue cards and they could be anything?
yeah.
That's really dodgy.
Well,
So.
you could just let your dudes die, basically. I mean, that because they all die at the end of conflict, you technically get the advancement. So if you just commit 5 to the conflict, 5 are gonna die. You'll get an extra spice or whatever, you know. So it's actually pretty cool. It's kind of like thinking of it as, depending on how many troops she's thrown in, she gets an additional combat bonus.
Mm.
That's how I'd see it. It doesn't actually double from worms, right? So you don't get that, but you get like an extra spice, an extra water here or there. That's not too bad. She
Yeah.
keeps her in the game, keeps her in the spice game, worm game, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, but I mean, still, you got to find. I mean, what, one, two, three? You got to find like what, seven, eight, nine troops. And I don't know how many troops as you would normally go through in a game of Dune Imperium. It's something I've never paid attention to, but I would think it pretty hard to like get through this track twice. I don't think you're ever getting any more than that realistically, unless the game goes super long.
Yeah,
That's being honest. But I mean, when you retreat something, you can then commit them later on, and then they die, so you kind of get double value out of them. So I don't know. It pure speculation on this. It's one of the ones until we get a chance to give her a spin. I have simply no idea how it's going to look.
yeah. I think it's clever that they put the spice there at the 3 spot for a 4 player because you can it's very common to commit 3 troops in the
Mm,
first round. And say you also get like a couple of other spice from the conflict or whatever other bonus. Like just having that extra spice allows you to then go buy the tech tiles. So like it's smart to have it there because it's going to be an early commitment. I wonder, and I think I agree with you that her drawing is a better effect for sure. But I think the fact that the play patterns with her are going to be like, all right, round 1, commit 3 troops, got to get that extra spice. It's like there's going to be kind of like scene patterns with her.
yes.
You could also just commit them, then retreat them, and the same action. Like you can basically, which is kind of weird. You can use your ring to I don't know, Arakeen,
Arcane.
throw 3 in, draw a card, immediately retreat them all, get a spice. It's kind of it's a weird
Mm.
effect. Like, I like it, but it's definitely going to be a bit strange. But any spice generation early is obviously better for the expansion anyway because spice is more leaned into. So yeah, I like it. I think
Yeah,
it's cool.
I think the only other example, if it's anything close to that, is base game with like retreating 3 troops and negotiate withdrawal, and then putting them back in with Sardaukar Legion on like your
Yeah,
reveal. It's about the only thing I can really. Oh, of course, like rapid mobilization, something like that. But yeah, like deploying 3 troops and immediately pulling them back is a
yeah,
bit odd. I'm not gonna lie. It's gonna look kind of strange doing that over the board. I'm not gonna lie there.
yeah. It'll be weird, but it'll be fun. It's a unique thing that she can do, and I like having those very unique leader abilities.
Mm.
Let's talk about Duncan Idaho.
Mhm.
Duncan Idaho is a 1 pip leader, so 1 complexity. His ability is Ginaz Swordmaster. The Swordmaster board space costs you 2 Solari less.
Solid,
Wow,
pretty good. I mean,
amazing,
I like the sound of a 4 Solari Swordmaster for Duncan.
amazing. And then his ring is into the fray. You may take the agent you sent this turn and deploy it to the conflict as a 2 strength unit that can't be retreated. If you have your Swordmaster, it has 3 strength instead. So we've already commented on this that this is sort of similar to one of our Conley effects that we did, where
Hmm.
we sent the actual leader, not the like the agent, but the leader into conflict, which is kind of fun.
You got
But
any
yeah,
royalties yet from Direwolf?
maybe I haven't gotten anything. Yeah,
Check the
but
post.
no, I'll check. But yeah, so Swordmaster being costing 2 less, and this is a much more synergistic and thematic way to frame Duncan Idaho. In my view, I think not having a Duncan Idaho leader for so long felt weird. Like he
Mm.
he was such an important character, and he is an important character going forward in the series. And if we get a movie 3, and we get a 4 and 5, who knows? I mean,
Spoilers.
he is what it's not a spoiler. Okay, the book's been out for like 50 years. Go read a
Spoilers for
book.
me.
All right, whatever. Go read a book. All right, and anyway, Duncan Idaho is like the main character. So it's interesting that we finally get him. I'm glad we do. And I think he's good. I think he's good. I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
know if he's great, but I think he's good.
totally solid. Pretty good. Cheap Swordmaster is good, but I have a feeling that people are going to forget that. It does encourage putting a spy very early on the Swordmaster spot because he can get it so darn cheap. His ring ability is quirky. I think it's probably a accurate way of describing it, but I think it's pretty good. Taking the agent you sent and deploying it is kind of very weird, and it's going to be strange seeing agents in the conflict. That is a bizarre sight. You can have, Duncan Idaho himself like 1v1ing a worm, and it's like, what in
Hmm.
the hell is going on here? It's going to make for some strange pictures at like end game states, as seeing agents like sitting around in amongst a ton of cubes and worms and stuff, but it should be good.
I
I
definitely think sending in like if you get the ability to ring to deep desert, put in 2 worms, throwing in your agent, then for 9 strength, and then sending in 2 more, 13 strength in one action is kind of crazy. So
Some big
I mean,
shock actions for sure.
yeah. So I'm excited for that. I love that the agent you sent has to go, so that it's like I'm getting in there, man. I'm gonna go fight. It's like
Mm.
very seems very Duncan Idaho, and also it frees up that board space, right? So it's like
Yes, that's the
someone else can
side
go
thing
do
that
it.
people forget. Yeah, the fact it's not just adding free strength, it's the fact that you're then, yeah, getting that the spore space then reopens itself. And it's this one you spent on that turn as well, I'm pretty sure. I think that's what it said. So, so if
Yes.
you go send like your ring to example like Deep Desert, for example, think, oh, that's really good, I'm gonna get my agent ton of strength. Someone else might be able to go in there as well, and that could be significant problems. So, I think I'm looking forward to it. It'll make for some, I think, for some good fun over the board.
Nice. All right, let's go on to Piter de Vries. So, Piter de Vries, 2 pip difficulty leader. His Twisted Genius ability is game start. Shuffle the twisted intrigue deck and place it face down near you. And at round start, draw a twisted intrigue card. These count as intrigue cards and can be stolen. So you basically start with an intrigue card in hand, although we've seen I think one instance of those in
Yes.
the preview, and they're weaker versions of the usual, right? So the one we have seen is called Controlled, and it says look at the top card of your deck. You may put it back, discard it, or spend 1 Solari to draw it. So it's very similar to one of the effects of base game Dune Imperium. When it says or, so it's a split card and it has a combat side and just 1 dagger, which is cool. So that's kind of cool. I like that he's going to have these little pocket aces, as you will, aces up your sleeve, whatever you want to
Mm.
call it. That gives him a little bit of an edge here or there. We'll see how strong they are exactly. His other ability is Ring, Harkonnen Advisor. Um, it is just get a troop. It says you can't deploy this troop to the conflict this turn.
Yes, we
Um,
should make a clarification here because both myself and Orski got this wrong when we thought it was the same as Shaddam's ring. You can't deploy anything that round, any units. We
just
both
this
completely
troop.
misread it. It's just physically that one troop.
Yes.
Which I think that the fact that we both got that wrong makes me fear that quite a lot of other people might also get that wrong. Maybe this needs a bit of rewording to be a little bit more clear some way, or maybe
No, no,
change
no,
it
no.
slightly. I don't know. I just think a lot of people are going to get that wrong first up. But outside of that, I quite like Pyta here. I think Pyta is cool. I think his Twisted Genius ability is a much cleaner way of doing this than, say, what Baron Harkonnen did, just paying a Solari for an intrigue. I think this is a much better way of doing it. It's more interesting. It's an inherent kind of trickiness to it as well, which makes you harder to play against because you never quite know. I think what you'll find is like as people in competitions will make a point of trying to remember what the twisted deck looks like, so people
Yeah.
can kind of try and remember that sort of thing, and there's definitely no harm in that. But I think yeah, just having those intrigues coming into you, I think the fact you get one each round is pretty sweet. They don't need to be particularly overtuned as well, just kind of little helpers here and there. But the fact that they do add into your hand of secrets and that they can be stolen means that you could have some really weird situations like these intrigues being used, against you.
Mm-hmm.
Is really quirky. But yeah, I quite like Pyta. I can see me definitely using him quite a lot. Just having intrigues in your hand is good. And the thing as well is that after a little while, people might struggle to remember how many intrigues are your deck and how many intrigues are from the actual main game, because there's not going to be any clues as to whether it's a twisted card or not on the back, assumably, because that would make no sense because they can be
Right.
stolen.
Right.
So that is going to make things a little tricky for the opponents to keep track of, I suspect, and could make for some fun. I think, yeah, Pyro, totally solid. I don't think he's going to be revolutionary in any stretch of imagination. I fear he might even be maybe slightly underpowered, perhaps, depending on what the intrigue deck looks like. But I think he'll just be a nice, solid, fun leader to play.
I agree. I think he is going to be really fun. It's going to depend on those intrigue cards, how many you have. I think there might be 10, right? I mean, there's 10 rounds. You get one
There
every
has to be at
round.
least 10.
There
I
has to
would
be at least round or
imagine,
10.
my guess is there'll be more, maybe like 15 or something. So it's not constant as to what it's going to
Yeah.
be.
So you don't know exactly what you're going to get round 10. I mean, that'd be kind of cool though if there were 10 and you knew exactly what the last card was. That'd be kind of neat. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I like him. I think he's fun. I think he's going to be probably the first leader I try when I play this. So,
Mm.
other than the next one, which I am super, super, super excited about, and that is Steersman Irakun. And that is going to be an interesting one because this ability is bizarre. It's a 3 pip difficulty, and you have Strange Form. It says you start the game with no water and without Signet Ring in your deck.
Which is
First of
wild.
all, what?
That is odd.
Yeah.
No signet ring. That is very strange.
That means that tech tile that gives your signet ring an ability does nothing for you,
Yeah.
which is kind of crazy. And then he has another effect, a Hungry for Spice. Whenever you gain 3 or more spice in a single turn, draw a card, which is pretty nice. I mean, that's pretty good. It's a little underpowered, I'd say. It's hard to get 3 sometimes.
But
But
this is where it
plot
might play
course.
into the real meat of this leader, I suspect.
Yes, exactly. Plot course. Game start. Shuffle your navigation cards and draw a hand of 5. Choose 4 to place face down above. So you have these little slots, 1, 2, 3, 4 above the card, which obviously is going to be here on the screen. You can see it. And if you're listening, then you have to imagine there are 4 little slots. Um, Choose 4 to place face down above in order. Return all others to the box. Whenever you reach 2 influence with a faction, play the next navigation card above, starting from the left. Now, I mean, this sounds a lot like Tessia, doesn't it? It's
Inherently, that's
it's
I
like
think that's where
Tessia.
it's got to be where the inspiration initially has come from. Obviously, Tessie is a little different, where you collect the snoopers off the factions, but the rewards that you're going to get for those snoopers are in a fixed order. Although what you exactly get is slightly up to you due to
Yeah.
the nature that you got a couple that give you the bonuses from the influence track. But this is like this if it ate about 10 cans of steroids and just like completely let loose. This is a wild, wild leader, possibly the wildest leader I've ever seen in Dune Imperium. And
Yeah.
we've seen some pretty crazy stuff over the course of time. I don't know how Steersman is only 3 complexity. This feels like it's got to be even more with no signet ring either. I mean, like I think this is like a 4 pip probably. This is on the former Tertia perhaps.
It's crazy.
Unfortunately, we are in pure speculation in regards to how good Steersman's going to be. We simply have absolutely no clue because we don't have any idea what the navigation deck looks like. We don't know how big it is. We don't know what it's going to look like, what kind of effects you're going to get. But I would humbly suggest that the effects of these cards are going to be pretty good to
Yeah.
have no signet ring and no water to begin with, and the fact that you get the card draw for free spice makes me think that there's going to be a lot of good stuff coming from these cards. I think a lot of them are going to give you spice. I think some of them will probably give you bumps, troop generation, other resources. I wouldn't be pretty surprised if one of them gives you the chance to like buy a tech or something as well.
Yeah.
I could totally see that. Maybe even some points conversion somewhere along the line. Um, these cards, it's a really dangerous fine line here. I feel like these cards have got to be very good to justify having those things. People forget, like when Staban Tuet came out and you lost your diplomacy. I think it was very visible the impact that was going to have in your game because, you know, outside of Seek Allies, that's your only faction access card that you start off with. And if you don't get any more, you got a problem.
Right.
Signet rings, I think, are a little bit more nuanced because you still have Doom Desert planets, you still have recons, you still have daggers, you still have access to these spaces. But I think people sometimes take for granted the signet ring abilities and the generation of stuff that gives you so early in the game. And I think Steersman not having access to any of that is quite significant, especially if you think some of the signet rings are going to give you spies, obviously resources. You think, Shaddam's ring, for example, being able to get bumps out of that, for example, that's pretty huge. So I think that is going to be quite jarring at first. I think people can quantify having no diplomacy a lot easier than no signet ring.
Yeah.
On the other hand, of course, having no signet ring means that you are going to see your diplomacy more, and you're more likely to get that faction access, which this leader is going to need. And when you get additional faction access, you are more likely to see that as well. And obviously, that plays into the strengths. This is like kind of like Tesia, but like actually going to the faction spaces. Instead of like kind of passively getting and shifting around the influence with your ring and whatnot. So really, really all over the place leader. How good it may not be is just complete wanton speculation. But I suspect that Steersman could be potentially quite strong.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's gonna be the one I'm gonna probably try first or second after Piter. Like just there's so much we don't know about it, and I love Tessia. Tessia is my favorite leader from Ix. Obviously doesn't hold a candle to Memnon from the base game, but who does really? But
No,
yeah,
no comment.
Steersman is competing for my favorite themed leader, I think, and it's going to be really fun to try out. So
I
looking forward
think
to that.
one thing I will add here, I think the idea that you get to like choose the audio rewards, I think inherently is very cool. But on top of that, I think it could also be very easy, depending on how these cards look, to just completely. I don't know, unless like they basically all just give you resources. Like I do fear that it could be quite easy to have these in an order that's not actually that beneficial for you. I think the fact that
Yeah,
you choose the order kind of almost forces them to be not too wildly different from each other. Again, you think obviously for Tessia, for example, the effects of the four snoopers are quite different, getting hold of obviously bonuses from the tracks, bumps, the discard for the spice, but they can kind of be different because it's fixed and it's the same every time. Because you're drawing randomly from a deck and then assigning the order of those rewards, I don't know how crazy wild you can get with these effects. I do fear that some of them are just going to be kind of like a bit similar to each other, but who knows?
maybe. I mean, yeah, I guess a really good point. I hadn't thought about that. I guess I was imagining that certain ones would be better, like if they were slotted into certain spots, like things like if this is the fourth, um, whatever they're called, revealed, then you get this extra bonus, but it has like a basic effect or something like that. So like it incentivizes you to play into their strengths, but maybe you want that bonus earlier or something like that. I can see that happening. That's how I imagined it kind of working, but maybe I'm just being weird.
There'll be a meta develop around this. There's absolutely no question, and there will be a lot of effort put in by players to kind of try and figure out what makes the most sense here. I think it'll be interesting when we do learn more, and I have a feeling we will get a feel for what this will look like in a future update from Dire Wolf from one of the design diaries. I imagine they'll bring back. So once they do that, I'll give you more information.
Awesome, awesome. All right, what else do we have here? We've talked about the new leaders we know about. There are 9 total leaders in the box, so there's 5 we don't know, which is crazy. I mean, these are already so out there that I can't wait to see the next 5 leaders. Like,
Yeah,
seriously.
there's a lot. I mean, I think it was obvious there was going to be a lot of leaders in this because it's the one thing that Uprising is kind of crying out for, is new leaders, definitely.
Yeah, yeah,
So I'm glad to see that, and I've talked about this obviously in the video that I did. Like, I think the fact that they had the kind of a lot of individuality about them, I think is definitely really strong, and it just gives a bit of personality to who it is you're playing, which I'm not want to sit here and say I don't think that's something that Dune Imperium has always catered for, but I do think just from a more casual point of view, I think feeling that kind of individuality and that specialness, I think is an important part of a playing experience.
yeah, I agree.
And like it's difficult for Uprising because it is kind of like the competitive man's Dune Imperium realistically. So I don't quite know how well that will integrate with itself, but I've always just felt like having those sort of special effects, and that really cool stuff that you do, just it just helps newer players kind of get into a game more and feel like they've got a certain thing that they do really well. And I think that's a really big appealing thing. And this is a pretty good way to do that.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better. All right, there's one other thing we do kind of know, but we don't quite know is there's going to be Sardaukar figurines added.
Mm.
According to this Bloodlines news post on Direwolf, it shows these figurines and then a deck or a pile of chits that have effects on them. And so I assume that when you acquire one of these guys, that you also acquire one of their skills. It's called 14 Sardaukar Commander Skills, and there's 7 minis, which is interesting. There's 7 minis, which means that either you get them and use them and they go away, kind of like worms do, or you keep them and someone's not going to get 2 of them. Like, that'd be kind of crazy, or I don't know exactly how that's going to work. Why are there 7? But that's an interesting number. It's not usual. I think there's 4 worms that came with the game,
Uh,
so
might
it's
have been more than that. I don't recall. I mean, obviously, I think in North Carolina, obviously, we were playing with like the models, and you had the wooden ones as well. So we were
well,
not
there's
sure on
8, right?
worms.
Right. There's 4, yeah, 4 wood, 4 plastic models. But yeah, I mean, like, there's only 4. It's a weird number, like 7. So I just wonder how that's going to
Mm.
work in this. But we do know some things about them. There's been some fuzzy images posted online. Thanks, guys. But also, we know 2 of them from the news post. Is that there's Canny says if you have an agent on a Landsred board space, you get 2 extra daggers, which is pretty good.
Mhm.
And then charismatic, and your reveal turn, you get an extra persuasion.
Yep, really strong,
So
really good.
that
There's a
very
reason
strong.
why people die for Mimic a lot of the time when it comes out in Rise of X, because that
I
extra
wonder.
persuasion is good.
I mean, I wonder if this is a random draw or if you get to choose or how that works. I
My
mean,
my guess is that they're basically like in a little bag of some kind, and if you get a commander, you pull 2 tiles, you keep one and discard the other.
okay, I could see
That would
that
be
working.
my guess, or maybe you put it back in the bag or something. I don't know. Like I know 7 and 14 means it could be either of those. I feel like you are. I can't see it being that you pull one of them and you get 1 tile and that's it. I feel like you've got to give some player agency here because the effects of these are going to be pretty different. And
Yeah,
obviously, there's going to be times where Canny might be really good for you, and there might be times where you basically have no council access in your deck, whatever, because you've already trashed your daggers, that sort of thing, and didn't buy any more, and you're not going down that route at all. So I feel like you've got to give the player some degree of choice. You won't want to be like getting hold of one of these Sardaukar dudes and pull a tile and you get one and it's not much use. And you're like, well, that was great. You want to, at least if you pull 2 or 3, and if none of them are great, at least you can say, well, I'm kind of unlucky. But like having one and it's not good to you, it's just gonna leave a bad taste in your mouth. So there has to be some kind of like you choose from X number of these, and then either they get taken out of the game or they go back into a bag. That's the only way I can see this working.
right, right. No, I agree with that. I think that's a good notice
Yeah.
there.
The
Uh,
problem is
yep,
that we don't know how you get these in the first place.
we don't. That's true. But supposedly they are being integrated. From what I heard, into the actual 4-player game, not just the 6-player game, right? So these
Mm.
are things you'll be getting. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more. Actually, there's 4 more. No, 3 more that we don't know, or we do know. Excuse me, that were revealed at Gen Con. One's called Desperate. It says reveal turn. Uh, something. It's like you get 3 daggers, but I don't know exactly. The symbol's a little bit weird. It's like I
Some
can't
kind of
tell what
cost
that
of
is.
some kind,
It's a
probably.
cost of some kind. What is it? Oh, maybe it's discard this. I think it says discard this to get 3 daggers. I think that's what it says. Or trash this. Yeah. I think that's what it says. So we saw Canny. There's one called Fierce, which gives you 1 dagger, but then if any other player has a sandworm in the conflict, you get an extra dagger, which is cool. And then there's one Loyal, which says if you have, I think, 3 influence with the Emperor, you get 2 daggers. So these are, I mean, they're really cool. I love them. I think that this is going to make, this is the kind of breadth that I was talking about. Like, we need more ways to do things. I know that this is all kind of funneling through the combat area, which I'm a little bit worried about, but
Mm.
it's fine. Like I know that Uprising is a combat centric game, but there are other options out there. It seems like anyway. So, yeah, those look fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a case of working out how we get them. My had first theorized maybe there's like an addendum to like the accept contract space and the Emperor, but I don't think that will happen. Because you'd have to like, and it might do. It might come with like a tile that you lay on top of that, and it changes how it works.
Right.
That wouldn't be the first time. Obviously, think Research Station when that got changed for Immortality. I believe it was. It had like a variant of the tile that you just put on top. Might have something for the Emperor, possibly that lets you do that. I just that's the most logical way I would think you get hold of these things. And also like the accept contract space isn't the most popular space in the game anyways. It is a kind of a little bit you kind of you go there because you need to get the bumps and maybe there's a decent looking tile on the contracts that might be of some use to you, but no one's really ever that thrilled to go accept contract unless like you're maybe Princess Irulan. That's about it
Interesting.
really. So that is my guess, is that you're going to see a modified contract space on the Emperor. I That would seem to me. I mean, there might also be like maybe an intrigue or so dotted about that lets you get hold of them. Maybe there's one of the leaders will have like a passive where you can do something once to get hold of a leader, or maybe they start with a leader or something. I mean, that would seem to be pretty strong as well. So there will be a little other ways of getting them, but that is my best guess, is that accept contract. It's
Oh
either
yeah.
that or maybe they changed the Sardaukar space as well. But I mean, Sardaukar space I think is totally fine. Like I know some people haven't been a big fan of it, but like 4 troops, and the intrigue, it's pretty damn good. I think people sleep on it, especially if obviously cards like Sardaukar coordination, and if you've got a tech like rapid dropships, for example. I don't see why I would change Sardaukar space. So that's what I would think I would do, is I would update the Emperor space.
Yeah, I agree with you. Although the Sardaukar space is called Sardaukar, so I'd imagine you get it there.
Yeah, that's why I think it's more likely to be that, but I actually think the other space is probably more worth doing it for that one. That's just
Yeah,
how.
yeah. You never know. All right. Pardon me. So that's, I think, everything we currently know about. No, we know some cards. Actually, we should talk about
Yeah,
some of the
yeah.
cards.
There's a couple of cards been shown out. I mean, we don't know very much about them. There's definitely going to be some extra cards brought in with the game for the Imperium deck, which is going to be fine. We've seen there's a new symbol which looks to be like a spy infiltration specific mechanic rather than just
Yeah,
putting one down, which is the yellow spy and then a grey spy. We don't know, but we assume that you put a spy as an infiltration to where someone else has got one rather than just being able to
yeah,
put one anywhere. Seems logical. Other than that, I mean, we don't really know, truth be told. I imagine there'll be some decent stuff. There'll be some stuff that will play into the text. You can get the X Embassy. I think there's X Ambassador, which seems to give you stuff if you've got like more tactiles, sort of thing. I'm sure there'll be some stuff that plays into the Sardaukar dudes and other bits and pieces. There'll be some infiltration, maybe even a couple of other funky stuff going on as well. We simply don't know.
yeah,
We'll have to see, basically. But I'm looking forward to some new cards. New cards are always good. Unless you're running Rise of X Immortality and you got a deck of like 120 of them, which is a bit cumbersome, really. But what you're gonna do. I think yeah, we'll be interested to see more of those. We will see more of those, I'm very sure, before the game comes out in a design diary. And we'll see if any extra really cool stuff comes out. The only thing that does worry me is that every time we have these expansions, is that there's always one card or two cards that seem really strong compared to basically everything else that comes out of it. I'm
yeah.
kind of hoping we don't see that here, but I mean, your margin's going to vary.
I think they've been a little bit more careful. Excuse me, about the cards they're potentially printing, and I think that that's an outcry from the community saying like, all right, this card is clearly a problem. I mean, we are always able to take cards out, and if you're doing custom stuff, it's not a big deal. But yeah, if you're like rules as written kind of person, and you want to use only the cards that are included in like Uprising and this expansion, then I'm hoping that something does give, and then maybe there's a addendum even in the back of the rule book saying like, it has been brought to our attention that this card is a bit game warping. Please take it out and replace it with this card, which is a fixed version of it. Something like
Yeah,
that
I mean,
would
sort of.
be
I mean,
great.
the
I
the
would
the,
love that.
the fact that there is an open conversation currently of like whenever the next Uprising competition happens to physically take out Guild Spy, should probably tell you pretty much the most of the story about that, and maybe that's the way to do it. I don't know. It's difficult because reprints are always tricky. Because once you print it out, it's out there, and you can't recall several tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands versions of the card to give out a new one. You just can't logistically do that. It doesn't make any sense. And you can't just have an updated online FAQ that says, "Oh, well, it does this now," because not everyone's going to have access to that. Even I mentioned Twilight Imperium. Twilight Imperium did do something not too dissimilar for that for one of the factions, for example. The Snake People. I forget the name. It's been a while since I played Twilight Imperium, and there are ways and means of trying to make the stuff like that happen, but it's very, very difficult.
Well,
Um,
they did it with base game, didn't they? I mean, with the Bene Gesserit card that gave you a bump if you had another Bene Gesserit card in play. It wasn't tagged as a Bene Gesserit, remember? And then they
Oh
handed those out.
yeah, I forgot that. That's a
Mission
good
Area
point.
Protectiva,
Yeah,
yeah.
Missionaria. Yeah, they had to do that. That's because that was a. Yeah, I forgot about that. I mean, it's because it should have been that, I suppose. I
Yeah.
mean, I forget about that because obviously, whenever I play the game, I play it online and it's fixed. I don't really
Yeah, yeah.
play it physically. And then I think Future Prints fix the card anyways, and I think I've got one of those. So, but yeah, the original versions, yeah, they didn't actually have the tag, did it? Completely forgot about that.
Yep.
So yeah,
Some some
that it can happen. It can happen.
some cool things I just want to mention before we end, in passing, is that they're including this new symbol next to cards that affect tactiles. So if you really like, you buy this and you really want to just add cool things to your Ix set, you could just like grab those and toss them in. Or if you didn't want to play with the Ix tactiles and you just wanted to add other cards, it seems like you can do that much more easily than before. So you just take those Ix cards out, and then you can just play Uprising with the other cards. Like,
Yeah,
that's another option. There's a lot of customization and forethought being put into the graphic design here, and I really love that. I think Direwolf was always good about taking care of their games and making sure that they were compatible, or backwards compatible is the term I think video games use. But yeah, it's really good to see.
yeah. There's a lot of symbols on these cards now. I mean, we've got standard. Ix has got what, like 2 pips on it. I think Immortality's got 3. Uprising's got like hexagons.
Yeah,
And you gotta watch out for all these different kind of symbols now for like when you do mix and match them. So when you eventually have to pull them apart, to do that accurately, because it can get a bit messy. So be a little bit cautious about that. I mean, yeah, the customization, it's kind of a weird one. I'm in a different spot to a lot of people because obviously I've organized competitions and I'm always slightly conscious of homebrewing stuff. Because obviously a lot of the stuff I do has got to be fairly close to rules as written, basically, and is fairly close to what it originally was, so that the max amount of people can kind of get into it. As I always say with homebrew, the more you homebrew something, the less accessible it becomes, and it's a very difficult balance between the two to keep that upright. So you've got to be
yeah,
very cautious of that. I do like that this kind of allows a lot of that flexibility. But at the same time, you have got to be a little bit conscious of the fact that it can, the more you personalize that experience, the more that you do ultimately go away from what it originally was. And while that's not a bad thing at all, and maybe that's what like your player group would do, if there's ever a point you then decide to kind of go elsewhere, you got to remember that what you're doing is completely alien to anyone else around you. And they're going to wonder what the hell is going on, and that can be both good and bad. So just be a little bit
yeah.
cautious about that. But again, I come from a unique spot of like I host the competitions and I run them, and they generally got to be fairly close to what they originally are. So I kind of view homebrew a little bit differently to what maybe some other people would.
Cool. I think we know. I think we've also talked about this before. There are some intrigue cards that we know, but we can go through these really quickly. I don't need to talk about them too much. You can look at them online. There's insider information, which is withdraw a spy, trash a card, draw a card, or ignore the influence requirements on a board space when sending an agent this turn. I believe
Pretty
that's what
good,
that says.
pretty
Pretty
strong.
good. Yeah, I love it. Battlefield research. Retreat one or two of your troops to buy a tech for -1 spice. Love it. Or if you have 3 or more tech tiles, get a point at the end game. Awesome. Love it. I wish that existed in Ix, actually. And then withdrawal agreement. Retreat 3 of your troops to go up with any faction.
Good.
And finally, coercive negotiation. When you deploy 3 or more units to the conflict in a single turn, reveal 3 contracts from the bank, take 1 and trash the other 2.
Solid. Not too
It's
bad.
okay. Yeah.
I think as well with intrigues, like generally intrigues in Uprising are all fairly decent. We talked about this
Yeah.
obviously in our review as well. There's one or two that are maybe a little bit stronger than others, but there's none that are really. There's very few that you'd say are kind of like not that great. There's maybe a couple that are kind of but there's none that I would say that are like bad in any respect. And I think this is going to continue that theme. I think the intrigue deck is about as well placed as it's probably ever been. In terms of just general balance, like everything almost always is useful to basically everyone at almost any time. It's very rare that you get an intrigue that you just simply don't have a use for in some form or another. It does happen occasionally, specifically around contracts. It tends to be specifically. I tend to find, but outside of that, like basically, if you got an intrigue, you can probably use it to help you out somewhere or another. So I hope we see more of that.
Just as a side note, have you ever played Uprising without the contracts?
No.
Okay, so I did that, and there's this intrigue card that you might know from me calling it the worst intrigue in the world, is that leverage.
Oh, leverage, yes.
So leverage says get a Solari, then if you harvested spice this turn, take a contract. But without the contracts, that just reads get 2 more Solari.
Yes, so it's just a free Solari card. That's pretty decent.
It's actually really good.
Yeah.
Without the contracts, or without the contract. It's like one of the weirder intrigues. Like that is, I think, the worst intrigue in the game if you're playing with the contracts. But if you're not, like getting 3 Solari is actually better. Yeah, that's one of the weirdest things I've come across. Like, yeah. So in any case, like. I understand now why it's in there. You know what I mean? It's like for people who don't like the contracts.
But it's an intrigue that's designed for contract. I mean, are you even meant to have that in the deck if there's no contracts?
Yeah, totally. Because
it doesn't have the red circle on it?
I don't... Because the contract space just says get 2 Solari. Like, I think that's... Isn't that what that works as? Like, isn't the contract space on the board get 2 Solari? So yeah, you can put it in... No, you can put it in. What does it matter? Put it in. Like it's actually good because then it says get a Solari, get 2 more Solari. That's what it reads. It's so funny. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. You want to talk?
It's just really bizarre to me. Yeah, no, it's just you saying that. It's just like, oh yeah, I guess so.
Do you want some closing thoughts on what we know so far and your excitement levels or anything like that?
Yeah, sure. As I maybe boot up TTS to check this intrigue. Yeah, no, I do think Bloodlines as a whole is going to look good. I think, like as we talked about, it just I'm really hoping it does widen the general scope of play, and it does give a few options outside of kind of feeling that you've got to go largely down the battle route, and anything that kind of allows a bit of options outside that, like it can't be bad, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what you definitely hope for. I think, as I've mentioned before, the individuality that is now kind of obviously going to be given to the leaders, I think is definitely the best way to go. And I'm very much looking forward to that. Hopefully, as well, things will remain fairly kind of, balance in a set. There's going to be obviously things are going to be uneven. That's the way the nature of all these things, and there's sometimes things people that don't quite think of or whatever else. That's totally fine. But I think the other thing I would mention as well is just like obviously the text was the one big surprise that I was not expecting at all, but I'm definitely very much looking forward to. And I think that it's going to be. I do think the experience is going to be a bit weird at first. Also, by the way, it does have a red circle on it, so you're not going to be playing it without contracts.
You can totally do it. It doesn't.
I know you can.
I don't know why. I don't know why you wouldn't. I mean, come on.
I'm just chucking it out there. But anyways, yeah, I do think I'm very optimistic for this expansion. I think especially for me that someone that hasn't played a whole lot of Uprising recently, as I've been playing a lot of Ix. And kind of remembering the effect that Ix had on the base game. As I've mentioned, obviously this is going to serve a bit of a different purpose, no doubt about that. And this does have kind of some big shoes to fill as well, given that Uprising was received on the whole pretty decently, and obviously with the Rise of Expansion being one of the better expansions that came well that's come out. So we'll see how things go for this. We'll learn more down the line, and obviously we'll keep tabs of that as we go along. The fact that we've got what 4-5 months until this comes out.
I
Um,
don't know. Isn't it like this Christmas time? Isn't it like November, December? Is that kind
I'm
of like
fairly
speculated time?
sure they. I mean, it says yeah from the press release. Will be coming to friendly local game stores in 2025, and I feel
Oh,
like I've read somewhere that it's like they're targeting January/February. I feel like I saw that somewhere, but I could be mistaken. But no, it's
okay.
gonna be. It's a few months until this comes out. We've got a while to wait, which is good in that it allows for a lot of time for this to kind of develop and breathe. But it's also maybe slightly strange the fact they already had like a copy of it out there at Gen Con, which suggests that maybe they don't have all that much to do. Maybe they're anticipating a lengthy time in like getting everything ready and produced. I don't know. You'd rather be ahead of the game than behind it for sure.
Yeah.
But we got a while to wait until we see Bloodlines, we see more detail. That's why we haven't seen any design diaries yet. I'm sure they won't be too far away. But I imagine yeah, we'll start seeing pre-orders probably around November, going into December. That's what they've done previously with expansions. Immortality came out in November, I believe, for pre-orders
Yeah.
initially, as I seem to recall. I don't know when Rise of X was released. I wasn't around for that particularly. So that one I couldn't tell you, but
Yeah,
way to go.
I don't know why. Oh, yeah, it's weird. I would think like Christmas time, but they might just have a lot of other things that are being released around that time. I know they just released the Invincible Hero building game.
Yes,
Uh,
which we got to have a touch with actually at North Carolina. It was actually pretty
yeah, it
cool.
was fun. Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Um,
They've got upcoming Clank Legacy Acquisitions Incorporated 2. I know that Clank Legacy 1 was very well regarded. I never got a chance to play it yet, but it's a yeah, that's another big seller for them. That's they're doing like a Kickstarter in May for that. So they've got a lot of stuff going on and probably some more digital stuff, right? They might be readying a new I don't know, some stuff for Dune Imperium Digital, like the competitions and stuff like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
So we'll see.
Still waiting on
But
ranked and obviously and everything like that. And I've had questions like, is Immortality coming to this? The answer is probably yes, and probably not for a while.
yeah,
But I imagine we'll see that. That is gonna take some time because I mean, like going through grafting with some of those cards in Immortality, that's gonna be some coding. That I'm glad I'm not on that job. That's gonna take a
yeah, I
while.
agree.
Um,
That's gonna be tough. I hope they do something where like you mouse to the side of the screen or top of the screen to bring up like a drop down board, and then if you unmouse, it goes away. Like I want some more like location specific effect, so I don't have to like so the board doesn't get that cluttered up. Like I think Ix is just about filled the board, so I
yeah.
wonder what they're gonna do with this extra board, you know. So they've got
Yeah,
a
it's
lot of
gonna be.
thinking to
There's
do.
gonna be stuff hidden behind menus. It's gonna be like doing an Iximo game on Dune Digital, like outside of having a second screen, does slightly concern me. They will have to make turn timers more than 90 seconds. There is no way 90 seconds is gonna be enough for some of these turns. They already even Ix occasionally 90 seconds isn't enough. You know, if you like with
Yeah,
Tesia Vernius and you like reveal and get hold of like Chome directorship, or you've got her ring ability and you're like choosing what to do with that. Sometimes 90 seconds isn't enough, or Sonic Snoopers. Like
yeah,
there's stuff you want to do in a turn and you physically can't do it because you don't have enough time.
yeah. I
Even though
agree.
you're just solidly doing actions. And that has
Yeah,
been
yeah,
raised multiple times, so we'll see it develops at that. But anyways, that's a whole separate deal. Yeah, we'll keep an eye on digital. It is all imminent. The iOS for that as well for Rise of X is all imminent. It was all meant to be out last month. Scott did mention that they are merely behind on that. And who knows? As is the usual way of these things with these ones, with these podcasts we do, the very next day or so we get the news brief saying it's coming out tomorrow.
it's coming out. Yeah, I know that's what's gonna happen
And
too.
I'm like, great.
We'll see you guys next time. We'll take care.
Yeah, take care. We'll see you soon.